Thank you so much for joining us. The ICC is celebrating 100 years centenary, and you have a good base in India as well. What are your members from abroad telling you about the prospects in India, given the fact that the entire global economy is facing a slowdown, and we are feeling the same here in India? But in terms of its attractiveness as a destination for investment, what are global companies telling you?
Wow, what a great question. Really great to be here. A couple of things. So I met with the Minister for Commerce today, and a couple of my observations from my discussion with him. First, I congratulated him on the improvement of India in the ease of doing business ranking. So let's face it, to go from the mid-100s to the mid-60s in the space of a pretty short period of time is a remarkable achievement, and that it means that India is heading in the right direction. I would also say, as I said to him, that I congratulate India on this huge mindset change that's occurred here, which embraces the idea of India being framed as a market economy. So these are really positive indicators. But I do acknowledge as well that there are some challenges still. I mean, economic growth is off. I mean, it's still going to run between 4 to 5%, but we understand, and I think you would understand as well, that what we need to get that growth pattern up again is a really clear and consistent policy framework, a clear integrated policy framework that supports economic development. And that's the kind of signal I think that foreign investors are also looking for. So ease of doing business is up. The embracing of the market economy and the transparency and the kind of regimes that are required to support that. But what's really needed now is not so much ad hoc policy interventions, it's a clear integrated policy framework that supports economic development, and that's the kind of signal I think that foreign investors
What are these specific interventions that you would like to see in India?
Well, I think there's still some issues about the way in which approvals are sought. If, say, for example, you want to do a major infrastructure project here, and you want to do it as a greenfield, which of course people would like it to happen. You know, you want to have clarity around what the process will be. You don't want to get stuck in a battle between the national and state governments. You want to ensure that there's clarity around land title, that all these things can be settled quickly. You need to have those sorts of things. They're not complicated issues, but they need to be sorted out.
In the past couple of months after the budget, once the new government took over, this is the second edition of the Modi government, we saw the government announcing several measures, including measures on taxation, where the government has said that if you want to start a new project, you will be taxed at a lower rate. Have companies abroad taken such policy announcements into cognizance, and will they be thinking of setting up base in India post these announcements?
Well, I think these are, again, positive steps. I mean, one of the great challenges as well for India is to ensure that you align the thinking of foreign investors with the contemporary India. Don't forget that a lot of people who sit on boards and think about investment in India still think about India in the context of the 90s, the early 2000s, when there was actually a less conducive environment for foreign investment. They want to see more than just tax rates being lowered. They do want to see substantive reform of land approvals, all those sorts of things as well. But yes, these are all positive steps, these are all positive signals, and people are taking notice. But you've got to work on this, and I think one of the pleasing things is the intensity with which your Prime Minister, your Minister for Commerce, your Minister for Finance, they're actually spending time abroad engaging with investors, engaging in describing contemporary India and helping people understand that going to 63 is not the end in terms of ease of doing business. India wants to be in the top 10.
Right. In terms of the global business environment that we are seeing, clearly there are challenges. There are challenges, for example, in the multilateral rule-based trading system as well. And as a result, we are seeing various bilateral and plurilateral arrangements being worked out. India was part of such an arrangement called RCEP. It then decided to walk out, saying that the RCEP free trade agreement doesn't suit its domestic needs. Given the fact that global value chains look for such trading agreements, what would you advise the Indian government when it comes to being part of such trade agreements?
Well, I thought that the progress that was made on RCEP was actually pretty positive. In a way, if I can, even without India, the fact that RCEP has closed and the opportunity is now there for ratification is a very positive counter-signal to the prevailing narrative that protectionism is back, unilateralism is back. Here are a group of very significant economies gathering together, recognising the 21st century in terms of value chains. The ease of transfer of goods and services across borders is actually really important. So we think that's a very good thing. I would say we're disappointed that India could not find the right kind of level of compromise in the RCEP arrangement for it to join the agreement. The point is, RCEP is not closed for good. And I understand, for example, that most members of RCEP would rather India be in than not in. So I suspect this story is not fully told yet. I think there's a fair bit more to run on this. As we've seen, the TPP, for example, would also be better with America in. And we also know that there is always the possibility, and this is what people want, the way in which that agreement has been designed has also been designed for America to re-engage. I would hope that over a period of time India could consider and find it in its national interest to engage in the value chain enabler, which is RCEP, and it's an important opportunity that it should be working towards.
Right. And last question to you would be regarding the global multilateral trading system. There are several challenges that have come up. Some of them are existential for an institution like WTO, for example. In the next less than a week, for example, the WTO Dispute Settlement Appellate Tribunal will lose its quorum, which means that it cannot function. What have you heard regarding that? Do you see any kind of agreement being worked out between the WTO members, given the fact that ICC is a keen observer of happenings at the WTO headquarters in Geneva?
Well, Rita, we're actually one of the intellectual fathers of the WTO. We actually initiated because we genuinely believe that a multilateral trading system where the rules are clear and there's enforcement mechanism in place is what business wants and what business needs. So we don't look on this. We're actually actively engaged in seeking to come up with propositions for the reform of the WTO to ensure that all parties can continue to align and actually support it. Yeah, we're in very difficult time. I mean, as often happens, by the way, with international negotiations, we're kind of like 1 minute to midnight. It's not all over till it's over. But also, even when and even if, and of course, it is possible that the US will not align and support the appointment of new appellate court justices. I mean, that's absolutely a risk. The whole process won't fall over on that day. Don't forget there's actually a ministerial meeting of WTO ministers occurring mid-next year in Kazakhstan. There is actually a fair bit of tarmac, a bit of road to run there, where there's a possibility of some kind of bargain or grand bargain emerging, which can accommodate, and there are legitimate concerns the US has. These need to be thought through and understood, but they need to be accommodated within, I think, a total reform package, not just of the way the appellate process operates, but actually a forward-looking reform process for the WTO. That roadmap needs to emerge relatively quickly. But there are actually signals that's available. By the way, you know, the US, in a sense, could have sought to block the whole WTO budget. Well, as I understand it, overnight they haven't done so. So
but there's no clarity on if they will not go forward. They have said, and Congress and the USTR has made it very clear that the current system doesn't work for US. So while they have said that they have not done anything on it, it's still not clear that if they will.
But Rito, the point to understand here, and this is where the ICC comes in, we actually don't think the WTO as it exists now is a perfect body. We actually think it needs to reform. The WTO, when it was formed, did not take into consideration the massive shift in terms of the digital economy and the consequence of that. It did not fully understand the reweighting of economic power and growth from the north to the south, from Asia, the way in which China would operate. There's lots of things that need to be rethought through. For the WTO to be fit for purpose in the 21st century, we need reform of the WTO. And frankly, we do need reform of the appellate process as well. Thank you.